Okay, hi there. So this time we're going to look at the labour variances. So next set of variances we'll look at are labour variances. So we can see here there's these labour variances to calculate efficiency, idle time, overtime and rate variance. We'll try and calculate all of them, but we don't actually need to. We're only going to be assessed on the efficiency, idle time, overtime and rate variance. But the reason we're calculating the total cost variances because it will help us reconcile the budget at the end. So for the labour variances, we can see them here. The labour variances seem a little bit simpler than other ones. It's only two numbers this time. Standard hours times standard rate, then actual production hours times standard rate, then actual production hours plus idle time times standard rate, then actual hours times standard rate, then actual hours times actual rate. But again, remember that you'll be given this, so don't worry about having to memorise these. Then the variances are the efficiency variance, the idle time variance, the overtime variance, the rate variance, and the total cost variance. So if we look at the labour variances here, first one, standard hours times standard rate, and that gives us A. So we'll see where we got standard rate from. If we look at the question, we can see that the standard rate is, for Abby and Lee, is £10 per hour. So the standard rate is a given, it's £10, so we've got that one from the question. It's a little bit trickier then to get the, next one's to get the standard hours, which is slightly trickier. So what we need to do is we need to know what the cost is per unit for Abby and for Lee. So for Abby and for Lee, the labour cost per unit, so this is per unit data, so it's £20 for Abby. So each unit of Abby we produce cost 20, in each unit of Lee we produced, the labour cost is £10 an hour. So we've got the labour cost per unit. Using these numbers, this is a slightly trickier part. We can calculate how many hours it takes to produce each unit. So we can work out how many hours it takes to produce a unit of Abby and how many hours it takes to produce a unit of Lee. So if we know the cost per unit and we also know the labour cost per hour, then if we do the labour cost per unit divided by the cost per hour, then that can tell us how many hours it took. So if the total cost was £20 and it was £10 per hour, then 20 divided by 10, it means 2 hours were spent on it. 2 hours at £10 an hour gave us the £20. Similarly, we do the labour cost per unit for Lee, we see was 10. We can see it was 10 from the question here. We divide it by the labour cost per hour, which was budgeted to be 10. So we do the hours, the budgeted hours divided by the budgeted cost per unit gives us £1 per hour. Forgive me, gives us 1 hour per unit. So we now know then that to produce a unit of Abby takes 2 hours and to produce a unit of Lee takes 1 hour. We then want to calculate the standard amount of hours it takes. So if it takes 2 hours to produce a unit of Abby and it takes 1 hour to produce a unit of Lee, we can work out how many hours it took to produce a unit, to produce all the amount of units of Abby by doing 2 times the number of units of Abby that were produced. So we can see that for Abby, there were 6,950 units produced, and for Lee there were 9,200 units produced. So to get Abby, what we've done is the hours per unit of 2 times by the number of units. I'll try again. To get the number of hours spent working on Abby, it was the hours per unit of 2 multiplied by the 6,950, the actual number of units. So 2 hours per unit times by 6,950 units gives us a 13,900 units. And for Lee, it was 1 hour per unit, and we times by the number of units produced, which was 9,200. So 1 times 9,200 gives us the the 9,200 number of hours. So 9,200 hours were spent producing Lee. So to get the standard hours, it's going to be the standard number of hours for Abby plus the standard number of hours for Lee. So it'll be 13,900 plus 9,200 gives us 23,100. So that's how we managed to calculate the standard number of hours. And we've got the standard rate of £10 an hour. So to get A, it's the standard hours times the standard rate gives us £231,000. The next amount of values we need, so to calculate the rest of these values down here, we see we've got the £10, the standard rate gives us A, B, C, and D. To get E, we need to get the actual rate. The actual rate's given us to us in the question. We can see here it's £10.20 an hour. So £10.20 an hour is the actual rate. So we just plug that in here. The next numbers are a little bit more nuanced to calculate. So there's three numbers we need to get: the total hours worked, idle time, and overtime. So the total number of hours is the total number of labour hours that we actually employed people for. So we can see combined hours for Abby and Lee were 23,000 hours. And that 23,000 includes 90 hours of idle time and 100 hours of overtime. So these are the three numbers we need to calculate the rest of these values here. So the actual number of hours that we actually paid for were 23,000. So we can take the 23,000 as the actual number of hours. The actual number of production hours is going to be the 23,000, take away the kind of unusual things. So take away the idle time and take away the overtime, gives us the actual number of 22,810 for the actual production hours. Next one then is going to be actual production hours plus idle time. So the actual production hours plus idle time is going to be the 22,810 plus the idle time. Then the actual number of hours that we actually paid people for is going to be the 23,000. So that gives us all the numbers here. And again, we just multiply through to get these values here. Then once we've got these values here, we can calculate the efficiency variances, A take away B. So we anticipated spending 231,000. Then we can see B, the efficiency. So if we look at the number of hours that were actually used as production, not as idle time and not as overtime, it came in at a lower amount. So the consequence, B is slightly lower than A. So that'll be a favourable variance. So this take away this gives a positive. So it means the cost is lower than we anticipated. The rest of them are adverse, unfortunately. B take away C, C take away D, D take away E. Then to get the total cost variance, it's going to be A take away E. And we get these negatives, which are adverse. So we see we anticipated spending 231,000. We actually spent 234,600 in labour. So overall then, we spent 3,600 more than we anticipated. And that's the total labour cost variance there. Okay, so hopefully we can now calculate all these. So just one more to go with the fixed cost variance. And that'll be us having finished the variances. Then we just need to reconcile the budget.